Welcome everyone to EcycloPod. I am your host, Sean Duregger, managing editor of Encyclopocalypse Publications. I want to apologize for yelling so loud on the last episode. I was excited to be back. I listened back and I went, oh, well, I'm yelling. Okay, again, I'm not going to do that this time around. With me today is author, artist, Jesse D'Angelo. Jesse, thank you so much for joining us on EcycloPod today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
We are anticipating, excited. We are bursting at the seams. Blackbirds Dance. By the time you are listening to this, dear listener, it is out. We've actually had this sitting in our release calendar for quite some time and trying to get it out there, give people time to read the first book, Skinner. And so it is out today. So grab that. These are nice little special editions, and the artwork that Jesse's included in these is pretty incredible. Really kind of enhances the immersion into this world that he's created. So Jesse, thank you for joining us, and can't wait to for people to start reading more of your work.
Thank you for the kind words, and I agree with that sentiment.
I'm
trying.
Hey, that's all we can do, man. We're all just trying, right?
I try to fail a lot, but I keep trying. So,
absolutely. And that's, you know what, I think we're all there. I think anybody who's been in kind of the indie creative space, I mean, that's kind of, that's the gig when you kind of take on this kind of stuff. And so I kind of have like a 3-act arc on the conversation today. I do want to have people get to know you. And because I've had the pleasure of knowing you for quite some time now. And then we're going to jump into your work, into the Skinner universe specifically, and Blackbirds Dance, which is the sequel to Skinner. And then at the end, I want to talk a little bit about kind of social media in the indie creative space, because, more and more, there's just so much noise in the space, and it can be distracting for somebody trying to jump into this. And, especially for people who really want to make this, this kind of thing they're living. It is hard. It's harder. And I think social media has a kind of plays into that. So I kind of want to have a conversation about that with Jesse, because him and I offline always are kind of going back and forth talking about this stuff. So it'll be a fun conversation.
Episode
I know. We'll try to contain ourselves.
Oh, and we're going to have to really be like flip art,
Yeah, it's really all good. Straight. It's all good. I'll guide the conversation the best I can, but you never know where these podcasts can go, and that's fine. That's the beauty of podcasts.
Questions. I will tell you no lies. Well,
I was talking to Mark on the last episode kind of about how you and I met, and it's really serendipitous in many ways, and kind of falls into kind of my philosophy of life and everything about kind of, building things you enjoy and then kind of seeing where the universe takes you. I had a podcast called The Screencast. Gosh, man, like over 10 years ago. I think it's insane when you look at the time. But time is an illusion, everybody. And I had this podcast called The Screencast. We were talking about movies, and my buddy Brad Henderson, who I started the podcast with, we did a kind of month-long celebration of heavy metal horror. And he was the one who booked all the guests. He knew everybody. And he had Cynthia Surreal. If I pronounce that name wrong, I apologize, Cindy. You'll correct me. Surreal. Okay, perfect. We had Cindy on, and man, that was probably one of my favorite conversations that I had. We were talking about Black Roses, her career in Hollywood as a screenwriter. I believe she's also an author. She wrote the novelization of did she write the novelization of Megiddo?
Yes.
Or the screenplay.
She's done a lot. She used to be a English literature professor. She worked in magazine publishing, and she and John Fasano, who my stepfather, who directed those old movies, they met doing porn. I can't. She was a director. Yeah. He was doing makeup, and eventually, so they were doing behind the scenes stuff making like old school porn magazines, and some would be like magazine porn, some would be like professional wrestling magazines or like monster truck magazines. I mean, they did all sorts of shit. And this was back in the day where like making a magazine, you had a big, drafting table and you'd cut out strips and glue them all together onto the thing. And they'd be doing that at home. And I'd be a little kid looking at that. And then they went off and made these movies. So they were always,
Yeah.
they were a couple characters. Sean has passed away, like 8-9 years ago. It's crazy. It's been that
Yeah.
long. But like, yeah, he and my mom, like, they're a couple characters. And you got your mom on your podcast.
It was great.
I didn't hear that, but I'd like to hear that conversation because she's an interesting person to have a conversation with. My mom.
I'm in the process. I'd taken all those down. I'm in the process of kind of creating an archive for my favorite conversations of just the interviews, because I think interviews were the best on that show. But yeah, so we had a great conversation with her. She talked about her kids. She talked about I'm gonna mess up your sister's name. We just tried to confirm it, and I'm gonna say it wrong. So go ahead and just automatically correct me before I even mess it up.
Her name is Lucia Fasano.
Lucia.
So in Spanish it would be Lucia.
Right.
In Italian, CI makes a ch sound. So,
okay. So Lucia, she contacted me after the podcast, and she was like, "Hey, my brother Jesse, I think you just moved to Tennessee. She goes, he's about to launch a couple books, and do you mind, kind of giving it a shout out, when they launch?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, great." And the first two books, I think Skinner was one of the first ones, Skinner, and then something with tails and something with a lake. You were like, "Here's my books."
Yeah,
What were those
it
ones?
was either a great idea or a terrible idea. But my plan was that I was going to release my first 3 books at once.
Mhm.
So, well, if I just release one book, if someone buys it and likes it, well, I've got nothing more for them. But if I release a few, then I've got myself a little built-in catalog. So if you buy one of them, hey, Jesse has 2 more books available. And that was the thinking. Of course, trying to promote 3 books simultaneously when you don't have any money or whatever. So really, it might not have been such a great idea, but I wrote Lady of the Lake first. That was the first complete novel. And after that, I started writing Skinner, and that only took me a few months. And I was like, should I release Lady of the Lake just by itself? And then I was like, well, I also have a bunch of short stories. I had like 5 or 6 short stories that I was already really happy with. I was like, if I write just a handful more short stories, I could also have a book of short stories. And I put out 3 books all at once because I have basically 3 books ready. I should say the reason I started writing Skinner was because at the time I was trying to go the traditional route of like getting an agent and all of that. So I was sending out Lady of the Lake, all the agents I could find that anywhere in their website said they're interested in horror or thriller or anything. Like, I must have sent it to about 75, 80 agencies, Lady of the Lake, and they all turned me down or didn't reply at all. And this took like almost a year. I was sending out Lady of the Lake for like 10 months or something and getting no replies. And I was like, and in the meantime, I started writing Skinner because I'm not just going to sit there twiddling my thumbs waiting for a reply from my query. So I'm like, while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to start writing the next thing. And what happened was I finished writing Skinner and I still hadn't gotten an agent from Lady of the Lake. So it's like, okay, now I've got these 2 complete novels done and almost enough short stories to release a book of short stories. So I'll write a couple more short stories and then I'll have 3 books. So I put all 3 out at the same time. But looking back on Skinner, I wasn't entirely satisfied with it. I should have gotten, I edited that myself. And I really should have had, another editor look at it for me. Not that there was a lot of typos or anything like that, but there were a few things that needed tweaking and smoothing out. And so a couple years later, that's when I went to do the special edition of Skinner with you and Mark and Encyclopocalypse. So I just went through and smoothed everything out, changed a few details, gave it a new cover, put the art gallery in there, tried to give it some, we got a nice introduction from Jeff Strand. So I tried to give it enough new stuff to justify a new release. And yeah, Skinner always, the first release of it was like, I always felt like I didn't do the book enough justice, releasing it at the same time with the other two book. Then Skinner always seemed to me to be like an event, like one of my bigger titles. Like it's the, I want it to be as like Lord of the Rings level, but not that style of fantasy, but like I want it to be like huge.
Yeah.
Series, and it kind of just went like, kind of, there's a lot of people bought it, and it's a hard kind of thing to describe because you say, well, what is it? Is it horror? I'm like, well, yeah, it's also an epic adventure. There's a lot of humor in it. There, so is it horror? Is it action horror? Is it dark fantasy? There's all these different terms, and I think it's always easier to sell something when it's like really super clear what it is that you're marketing. I got into a debate recently with some people about horror book covers and stuff. And like, if you have a haunted house book, it's a picture of a house. If you don't know what to do, put a big skull on the cover. I was kind of like,
well, you're
in front of that and saying like, let's try not to put a skull on every cover and whatever. But really, it's like there's a lot of skulls and houses on book covers because it works.
Yeah.
Certain cliches work. And because they communicate clearly what the book is, what they're trying to sell.
I was in a conversation with Joshua Milliken a couple of days ago, and he's working on a Bigfoot novel, but he doesn't want Bigfoot or any of the cliches on the cover. So it's like, oh, that'll be interesting. We'll see how it plays out. So we're trying to find the happy medium. I can help with that.
I'm a Bigfoot guy, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to study. I went out on expeditions. I did art and cover for a Bigfoot book that I don't want to publicize because the guy was an asshole and he turned out to, it was a bad experience, but I was happy with the work I did. I did some drawings, but yeah, it's like, I love cryptozoology and I'm very open-minded to all the mysteries of the world and the universe and things we haven't discovered or haven't put a pin on what exactly they are and how it works. But I've seen plenty of evidence to suggest that there really are these beings out there. I don't even know if I want to call them creatures because really, after everything I've seen and heard, they seem more like, humans, just populations of some other kind of being, and maybe they don't even exist fully in our dimension.
Interdimensional realms, or interdimensional beings that are us from the future that have reached a certain point of enlightenment and technology that they're coming back to warn us of the dangers that we've brought upon the world, right?
Maybe. I don't know about us for the future part, but I'm just saying, like, I'm open-minded to all those things. There's so much mystery and so much in the world that I don't know and nobody knows, nobody understands, that I don't want to be the person to say, like, this is how it is and this is how it's not. That I didn't fucking know. It's like, what do I know? So, but not to get off topic about that. But
that's going to happen. That's fine. I mean, we'll save some stuff for my the podcast I'm resurrecting, the Armchair Philosopher. We'll put a pin in this and we'll talk about all that stuff on this show.
I want to be on that show too because I'm also a philosopher, or at least I like to tell myself I am.
Yeah, that's why Armchair Philosopher. I was like, same kind of thing. I was like, well, I like the bigger ideas, but I don't know shit. So
right,
let's get people smarter than me on. Let's get things right. so what I want to bring it back a little bit. We're going to dive into Skinner, the mythology of Skinner, and all that, because there is some stuff. There's a lot of things that you put into this world, and a lot of research that you did that I want to get to. Let's talk about, so you were, when you're a kid, you're around, you're hanging around movie sets. You're in the movie Black Roses, I believe.
Yep.
Heavy metal horror classic right there on Anchor Bay DVD. Needs to have a Blu-ray, everybody. This needs a Blu-ray. If Rock and Roll Nightmare can, or not Rock and Roll Nightmare, if Rock and Roll, oh, God damn it, I can't even think. Trick or Treat can get a Blu-ray. No, Trick or Treat's not even on Blu-ray. What one just came out on Blu-ray?
Now, Trick or Treat is, they just released a like super special edition of Trick or Treat on Blu-ray.
Okay, yeah, that's right. That's what I'm thinking of. There's so many. I'm thinking of Rocktober Blood. That's what I was thinking of. Rocktober Blood. That needs to be on Blu-ray too.
Oh yeah, that's no thanks. But Trick or Treat is like a, it's a step up from Black Roses. They had a bigger budget. They had better talent and whatever. But Black Roses, there's a lot of talented people worked on it. They hadn't really gotten very good at what they did yet. It wouldn't be until years later of practice that they got good. But we have people on that show. But we're doing a documentary on Black Roses. So anybody interested in that, it's in the works. You can look up on Facebook, Black Roses documentary. It'll take you to the group. And they're coming to interview me about it soon, which should be interesting. Yeah. If you ever have anybody coming to interview you about a movie you acted in when you were 8 years old. I mean,
how much do you really remember?
A movie as silly as Black Roses. I mean, it's bonkers.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Well, it's funny because I feel like your mom did exactly, and your stepdad did exactly kind of what I do to my daughter sometimes, where I'm like, hey, I'm working on a book cover. Can you help me with this? And I had her actually create a book cover one time because her art kind of matched the vibe of the book. But she hasn't accepted any more of my offers. But brought you along, and I don't know, did you get sucked into Rock and Roll Nightmare as well, or were you just kind of on set hanging out with the rubber starfish aliens?
You need to watch that DVD play.
I have, but you were.
I turned into a werewolf in Rock and Roll Night.
Yeah, there you go. And how old were you in that? Were you still around the same time?
Yeah. It was like, they were like a year apart. So I think I was like 7 in Rock and Roll Nightmare and then 8 in Black Roses.
Good times.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, so you had that spark of kind of seeing, the entertainment industry, but you had an interesting, you had a perspective because you were seeing kind of mostly a lot of behind the scenes, the writing, the planning. But like with my kids, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm publishing books. They have no clue what I'm doing. They don't pay attention. When did that seed of creativity and storytelling kind of gain a kind of root in your brain and start to sprout?
Oh, right then, super early. The thing about you and what you do and your kids and book publishing, it's all on a screen. It's all typing. You're seeing text and whatever. But when you're making a movie and you're making that kind of movie, super low budget, it's like, we're doing things out of our house. So it's like some of the monsters from Rock and Roll Nightmare, they were making those in our basement. We just go into our basement and we're sculpting and making these molds and stuff. And, we had actors come to our house to audition, so it's like right from the very beginning, I'm already seeing all the cool stuff, and on set, I can see them painting the monsters and operating the monsters. And there's one moment, it's not from any of those movies. Ironically, it's from one of our home videos that we made. Just like on a Saturday, John took out I think it was a VHS. It wasn't even Super 8. Took out a VHS camera. He's like, Jesse, we'll shoot a movie where you Godzilla. It'll be called Jesse versus Godzilla, right? How am I going to fight Godzilla? He says, we'll use forced perspective. Forced perspective, what? And
magic, dude. Forced perspective rule.
And we shot it in sequence. Now, for anybody who doesn't know what forced perspective is, I'll use a toy. So
I'm like glancing to see if I have any toys laying around. Like, this is the kind of guys we are.
Here's an old toy of the Frankenstein monster. I've had this since I was a little kid, right? So imagine, here's one of my posable guys that sometimes I use for art reference, right? So these guys, if you hold them up, come on, camera, where are you? So you hold them up there? Yeah. So this guy is bigger than Frankenstein, right? But if I hold Frankenstein up close to the camera and I hold this guy far away, oh my God, Frankenstein looks like he's 100 feet tall now. And so that's what John did. He said, Jesse, go stand way in the background and look up at the sky and act scared like you're looking at something. I was like, okay. So I did that. And while he's doing that, he's holding the camera and he's holding a toy of Godzilla and going, right? I didn't understand, but then he said, Jesse, come to the camera, watch. He rewound it and let me see in the viewfinder. And sure enough, there's little me on the screen. And then there's this big Godzilla looming over me. That is amazing. This little illusion that was created. And that was really a big spark for me as far as being an artist, working in film, being a storyteller. It was just like, wow, that little thing that you can do. And we did the whole movie where it's like over Godzilla's shoulder, looking down at me, and we're having fights. Like, Jesse, pick up a stick. And I'm going like, and Godzilla's like, I was like, so cool. And so that really kind of sparked it for me. And then whenever we are on one of those sets, Black Roses, Rock and Roll Nightmare, whatever, I watch them do exact stuff, watches them set this fascinated, and I'm trying to get in for when the girls are taking their clothes off with their own needs. Well, you know, every now and then they'd let me help with the makeup. Like, here, Jesse, here's a cup of blood, and you can paint it around the monster thing or what. So they really let me in on it, and they let me in on the fun stuff. So for me, it was always fun. And I was like, always, like right from when I was like 7 years old and started seeing that stuff that we were doing. Where I'm a filmmaker. Yeah. I'm going to be a director. I'm going to be an actor. And so whether it was acting, directing, writing, drawing, I was always like creating, thinking of stories, whether it's a short story, trying to write a script, trying to make a movie. It's like always some way like storytelling, drawing, writing, painting, you know.
And as you got older, you started, you were gunning for that, you know, like you wrote scripts, you were involved in some other films as you were getting older. Did you go to a college in the LA area to do this, or was this kind of, you're just pursuing this just on to your own devices?
I went to college only for 2 years. I went to Sarah Lawrence College in New York. Had a great time, but I think that the tuition kept going up, and it was more than my family had put aside for my college. And I realized, well, if I do these next 2 years, I'm going to be in debt. Like everyone else I'm talking to is in debt. And all these people who have graduated college, they're like, oh, I'm in crippling debt. I'll never be able to pay it off. And I'm like, you know, really, I want to make movies and act and write and stuff. And you don't need a BA for any of that.
Right.
You know, and especially it's like, I've got connections in Hollywood. I've already worked on movies. I've got offers. Like I could go out and work on movies. So I just did that. I left after 2 years and I just went back to LA and started working. And, you know, it was like working as a PA, working as an assistant in a special effects shop. I started getting jobs doing storyboards, which was definitely a step up. And so I worked as much as I could in the film industry for a while. And while I was doing that, I'm writing scripts. I'm trying to get my own films produced. I'm making short films. So, you know, but bottom line is here I am in Tennessee writing indie horror novels. So obviously that career trajectory didn't pan out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that industry is so unforgiving. So many people, I know so many talented people that have been just ground up, chewed up, and spit out. Buddy of mine, Derek Hefner, brilliant artist, incredible comic book artist, incredible imagination. He did a couple years at Disney, and as talented as he is, that didn't pan out, and he moved to Oklahoma and is there doing his thing. He's a freelance artist playing drums. I mean, but yeah, that, and and when I was living in Oklahoma for a while, I knew so many people who would, because I was kind of involved in the band scene, so we would have a lot of local bands and musicians kind of head to, try to, all right, I'm gonna go out to Hollywood. I'm gonna meet with a label or you know, get a manager, and a year later they're back. So it's one of those things where, and I think as creatives go, we can put in our brains like, well, I failed at that. All right, well, I tried, whatever. But it's important, I think, people listening, and especially younger creatives who are trying to do the same thing in even more unforgiving time. It's not you. You know what I mean? Like, this is the industry. And especially going for creative type of career, it gets harder. And we'll talk about, we'll dive into this even more. But so it's important, I think, because artists are we're the most self-deprecating people around, because we are always internally looking at ourselves and what I do wrong, and always kind of going through this stuff. But so I would say we're going to reframe. So that time in Hollywood prepared you to really start tackling your own projects, and you have nothing holding you back to get these stories out. So, I mean, so let's jump into Skinner, because I think out of all that you've written, Skinner is the most complex and I think most, quote unquote, mainstream, not in a bad sense, like I usually use the word mainstream, but I think it is a very approachable blend of urban fantasy, action, horror. And it's something like as I'm reading it, I am imagining this stuff, which is why you're a great fit for Encyclopocalypse, because what we like to do, and what kind of our main goal is, books that really activate your imagination, and you can almost imagine these as films in your brain as you're reading them. And Skinner has all the great, ingredients for what I would think. I mean, it would be like I'm watching, jumping into certain like TV shows and everything. Like, this would be an amazing, TV show because of the characters and the story and the through lines.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
So
fun.
good.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's my job to kiss your ass right now, Jesse. Okay. Um, but what I like about and Mark and I talk about this a lot. We read a lot of authors, and there's a lot of great authors out there. But what you do, and I think eventually, like I said, we're laying foundations and hoping things go the way we want them to go, right? You aren't an author who wants to just stay in one genre, only talking to one audience. So, I mean, let's look at your other books. You got Pray to God, which is kind of this really cool creature feature that I narrated, by the way. I'm the audiobook narrator on that.
You did a great job.
I mean, that one, like, as I'm narrating it, I'm like, man, I want to see this movie because the creature's awesome. The characters are great. The mystery and the secrets characters hold in that book are fantastic. You weave the storyline's great, and that's what you're good. You're good at building story, but you're also really good at payoff. And then the other book I narrated, Doomsday Dogs, which is kind of this tongue-in-cheek, werewolf apocalypse story. That was a lot of fun for me to narrate. And if I'm missing any of the earlier books, let me know. And then there's Composite, which is kind of this, is more of a police procedural mystery. That is like that as far as like writing and alone and mystery, like that's that one's a strong book. Everyone should read composite. If you're want to kind of step away from straight horror or something like that, I want a good mystery like composite. I can't recommend enough. So
That's
so you
I would say also for anybody, like, it's fucked up. Like, it's not like a cozy thriller. It's not a cozy, like, it's right. Like,
yeah.
I wrote it with like Silence of the Lambs in mind, that kind of vibe where like, it's a serial killer thriller, but like, is it horror? Really?
Well, it's
It's
like
horror.
yeah, but you know, like
Yeah.
films like Silence of the Lambs and Seven. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it would be in good company with those for sure. So you like to experiment. And in fact, we will be talking about your next idea, which is leans more science fiction. So let's you kind of and for the Skinner universe, you kind of we didn't even talk about Dying Sheep. I want to do that right now, and Dying Sheep 3D is in the works.
Yes, it is.
And those are just kind of fun, splattery, a satire of extreme horror and horror tropes.
Yeah.
Following around this really awful serial killer who you kind of start to love.
I mean, the thing is, what you're describing is either like a great idea or a terrible idea. But I'm kind of all over the place. You know, well,
I think it's a great.
all over.
I think it's a great idea. I think authors that stretch themselves. I think you are number one. You are not. You don't like being comfortable, and that's good. When you're an artist who doesn't like to stay safe and comfortable, that's a good thing because you're growing. You're always continually growing. And it actually helps when you do a book like Skinner and you're blending so many genres that to be, playing in different genres, I think, is a strength. And this is authors kind of go back and forth on this. I saw John Baltusberger and Lucas Mangum in a kind of online conversation about how, if I were to do it differently, I would, play in different genres. And I'm like, what's stopping you guys? If only I didn't pigeonhole myself into this genre. Well, nothing's stopping you. Yeah.
Some people disagree. Some people think like, and they might be right. Like, you want to pigeonhole yourself because it makes it easier to sell.
Yeah.
It makes it like, what are you? I'm a horror writer. Boom. Nice and easy. If you go to conventions, you see people's banners, it'll say, John Doe. You talk about a name that you shouldn't ever forget. John Doe, horror writer, author of nightmares. Like, people put these labels on themselves, and maybe it's a great idea because it makes it easily accessible for people to understand what you are. And I'm here trying to do different things, but I will say, even though I'm doing different things, really it's all for the same audience.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's
absolutely.
not like I'm writing one like horror novel and then I'm writing like a romantic piece, like Jane Austen kind of thing. I'm not ever writing just a straight comedy. It's going to be comedy with horror. So like everything I do plays in this spectrum of horror, thriller, fantasy, sci-fi, genre stuff.
Absolutely.
So it's always going to be genre related, meaning not just, regular, it's not going to be a regular drama. There's always going to be something supernatural or horrific or something. So really, I think if anybody likes one of my books, even though the others might be different in tone and style and whatever, they're always like, I'm in every one of them. And they all are related, even though some of them are goofy, funny, and others are action and others are more this or that. They're all very Jesse D'Angelo.
Yeah. And that's what's great. Like, you're able to find your voice and bring your voice through these different genres. And that's what I mean. Like, playing in different genres doesn't mean you're totally going against what you like to do. But it's stretching yourself just a little bit more here. So, and that's what I want to get to, and bring it all together here for the Skinner universe, because I think this is you kind of bringing, this is the playground where you're bringing everything kind of together, into this complex world with these characters, um, and you're playing, you play with tropes, play with all this stuff. So in many ways, I look at the Skinner saga as kind of the most Jesse D'Angelo thing that you have, and it's kind of the catalyst for you playing in the different genres. But these books, like, let me just show you a comparison, because generally the books that I've read, about like that thick, the Dying Sheep is a nice little novella size. But then you get to your the Skinner books, and I mean, yeah, there's art in here, but these are little chunky boys right here. You know what I mean? There's more going on with these than a quick writing exercise. These are, out of everything you've written, I feel
Tonight have some of those.
that
Oh
these are
yeah.
the ones that you really kind of really have put your research in. And so let's set up the Skinner saga, and the influence and the mythologies that you play with, because I saw you had spent some time with some friends on it was on a reservation,
Yep, the Cherokee
Cherokee
Reservation.
reservation. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because these aren't just things you sat down and just wrote out. You put in the work, specifically for the Skinner saga. So let's set up the Skinner saga. What is it? What was Skinner? How's that lead, without, I guess, spoilers, leading into Blackbird's Dance? Let's start with the general idea of Skinner as
Well,
this thing world.
I've always loved werewolves, right? So originally it was going to be a werewolf hero, like a guy who becomes a werewolf, and he goes and fights other monsters, and there's yeah. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, well, there's a lot of werewolves. What if he's a were? And I started looking at pictures of, well, what if he's a jaguar? Ooh, what if he's a black jaguar? And so all this stuff kind of snowballs, and well,
Yeah.
he's got to have a love interest. Well, she's maybe a bird. She transforms. How do you transform into a leopard and a jaguar? But then there's also werewolves and so the mythology started unraveling, and basically, what the mythology that I came up with is that a Skinner is a skinwalker. They're skinwalkers, but they call themselves Skinners. Now, these are not the skinwalkers that if you Google right now, you'll see. Like, you Google skinwalker and you'll see all the old Navajo legends, and somebody wearing they transform, they're like witches and this and that have nothing to do with my thing. So I just took skinwalker and I just reinvented it for my own purposes. They're basically shapeshifters, but I'm calling them skinwalkers, Skinners. And the way it works in this universe is everyone in the world has an animal spirit, right? But only a small number of people in the world are kind of tethered to it, so that they can actually access their animal spirit and transform. And the only way they can do that, much like a werewolf, if they get bitten by another Skinner, or in this case, if they have sex with another Skinner. And that was really like movies like Cat People.
Yes.
The one from the 80s,
Yep.
where it's like, if one of them makes love, they transform into a cat. And so I was like, well, what if, yeah, if you get bitten by a werewolf, you could turn into a werewolf. But what if you get fucked by a werewolf? You could also turn into a werewolf, but you would only turn into a werewolf if the wolf is your spirit animal.
So it all depends on what's inside and their spirit animal. That's interesting.
So if you are naturally a Skinner and you're tethered to your spirit animal, let's say your spirit animal is a jaguar, but you get bitten by a werewolf, a wolf Skinner. Well, you're not going to turn into a wolf. You're going to turn into a jaguar Skinner or a hyena Skinner or whatever your own spirit animal is. And so the way it kind of breaks down in this universe is that there is a council called the Spirit Council, and they are a council of Skinners and other mystical creatures, and they're basically the guardians of the earth and the keepers of the balance, to keep bad, evil Skinners and other evil demons and whatnot from upsetting the balance, from destroying mankind and whatever. So the Spirit Council is sort of like the peacekeepers, the world police. They keep peace over all the other Skinners. But not all of them are good guys. They're the evil Skinners. They're the ones that want to cause chaos and pain. And, so our hero in this story is Will Shaw. He's a Cherokee Indian. He's a former Army Ranger. And after his time in the military, he got locked up in prison for 5 years for getting into a stupid bar fight. So when we meet him in this story, he's just out of prison. He doesn't know what to do with himself, doesn't know who he is. He's trying to find his place. And he discovers through a series of events that he is actually a Skinner and never knew it. And I'm not going to spoil too much, but he becomes his Black Jaguar self and finds himself sort of enlisted in this quest to take down this ring of evil Skinners that have become a child trafficking ring. And they're kidnapping these children and part of selling them off, but not only selling them off, they will also kill these children because they're monsters. They'll actually eat these children. And the ones they don't eat, will sell them off to the high. So it's taking on current topics like that, things that are actually going on in the world, and trying to be relevant with something like that. So basically, that's the backdrop: is that there's all these shapeshifters, skinwalkers living among us, fighting amongst each other for control and balance, basically. And our hero trying to find his place in it all, trying to make things right, getting involved in his love interest and all the drama that comes from that. So I hope I'm not spitballing too much, but that's kind of how things start. And then by book 2, Blackbird's Dance, he is continuing this quest. This time it leads him to the Cherokee Reservation in North Carolina. And
by the way, this is my spirit animal right here. So if I ever, I'm married, so I mean, my wife didn't turn me into a skinwalker. So if I got bit by a skinwalker, I would basically turn into this, which is like
pretty
adorable,
ferocious,
but also like, pretty ferociously tired.
I love.
For those listening, I'm holding up my dog Charlie, who I tend to show off because he's just cute. All right.
Oh, that's right. Some people are listening and not watching.
Yeah.
I have to remember that.
So
this time we end up on the Cherokee Reservation. Something evil's going down. Something has been targeting children on the Cherokee Reservation, and Will has to go figure out what it is. There's a conspiracy. There's monsters. There's action. There's spiciness. There's some humor. There's art. I really busted my ass on this book. Did mini draft. Gave it to a great editor. Did the best part that I could. I'm swinging for the fences. Everything I'm doing, I'm swinging for the fences. But to talk more about what you're saying was like social media and Hollywood and, what you're trying to do with career and this and that. And everybody wants to be the biggest thing in the world. And definitely that was a big part of my mindset too. We all want to be best-selling authors or whatever it is we're doing. And this is something you and I were talking more about off screen, and I don't want to get too much into it, but you and I have both been doing some inward searching and, philosophizing and thinking about things like faith and God and how to live life and how to, I've been thinking about what do I need to do to improve and what are all the real truths? So what do I really want and all this kind of thing. And I've prayed for a long time, like many, many years. But I've started praying differently. And one of the things that I'm just now starting and is I'm not asking for anything when I pray. I'm not like, I'm about to release this book tomorrow, and I'm not praying like, God, please let this book sell really well. Please let me do really well and be a great, famous, rich author or whatever. Instead, I'm God, please just put me where you want me.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
it's not about what I want. Who cares what I want? What does God want? What does God want me to do? Where does God want me to be? All I can do is the best I can do.
Yeah.
Right. So, I wrote the best book I could. I did the best art that I could. I am self-deprecating, and I still look at it and think like,
Yeah.
I'm not the best in the world. There's artists out there better than me, and writers out there better than me. But man, do the best I can.
Yeah.
And if God wants this to be a successful book, it will be. If he wants me to be successful, I will be. But I can't base my happiness on other people's,
Right. Right.
impressions of me or how much money I make or whatever.
Yeah.
And this goes back to like, people trying to do this as a career and whatnot. People trying to do this as a career. I mean, look, you have to realize it's like one of the most hard things to do, like anything creative, being an actor, being a writer, being a director. It's like any of these things. It's like you've got like a less than 1% chance of even being able to make a living at it, let alone being like world famous or whatever. So you really got to be happy with yourself and be happy with the work you're doing. And like for me, I've been drawing and writing my whole life, and I'm never gonna stop.
Yeah.
I can't. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
It's like even
That's
if
your
I wasn't
soul, man.
publishing- Yeah, it's like even if I'm not publishing or trying to make a living or any of this, it's like I've got these stories that come into my head, and I got to put them down,
You gotta get
or
'em out.
they will sit on my shoulder, and they'll be like, "Hey, just remember me,
Yeah.
the vampire story. Write me.
Yep.
Remember that scene that you had where this happens and that happens, and then the light comes in, and then this. Write it down." It's like I have to,
Yeah.
So people doing this, trying to be successful at it, like you have to define what success means
Yeah.
for you. Does success mean that you're the next Stephen King, or does success mean that you're happy with the work you're doing and that the people that you are connecting with, it's touching them?
Yeah.
It's like there's so many different, definitions of success.
Yeah.
And right now it's like, look, let's be honest, Blackbirds Dance is the sequel to a book that we released that not a whole lot of people read. If you look at the Amazon, I think Skinner's got like 17 ratings. It's not like it's got hundreds of ratings, so it's like, I'm not putting this book out tomorrow thinking like, oh, this one's going to be the home run.
This is gonna be the one.
And I'm sorry for you, because you and Mark, you guys have put in a lot of work for this too. So like, I'd love for your sakes that it's a home run and all the work you put in. But like, really, it's like, I'm not expecting this book to, blow any records as far as sales, but it makes me happy, and it's the best I could do. And I know some people are going to love it. And I also believe that eventually this story is going to find its footing.
Right.
It's going to find its audience.
Yeah.
And it might not be until the third book gets published. It might not be until I'm long dead and several decades from now. So, some people are like, there was this author, Jesse D'Angelo, he wrote the Skinner series. And like 100 years from now, there might be a Skinner movie. Like forget movies, but like eventually people are going to connect with this story.
Well, I think that's the beauty, I think. And that's why I connect with novels so much, because there's so much untapped potential. But also the life of a book, I feel, is a lot different than movies. Movies can come and go, and they're very much a product of their time. They're very much a product of society and what's going on. They either hit or they miss, and then maybe someone discovers a movie later on, like like Black Roses. But you just never know. So I want to talk about this for Blackbird's Dance because so many authors, they don't have to do some do a lot of research, some don't. You actually you spent time on a Cherokee reservation, and I wanted to talk about that more because I think that I used to live in an area, and I talked about this last time, that I believe it was the Cherokee Indians would pass through, and it was called Sioux Island, and that island was never flattened. It's in the middle of farmland, never been flattened, probably because of the rocks or whatever. But that was literally a resting stop historically for the Cherokee Indians. So since I grew up in that area, I always, thought, like, what if there's some ancient creature, on that? Maybe that's the reason why that island has never been paved, or not paved, but not, tilled up or whatever. And, so I, and the Wendigo and that kind of stuff, I always kind of connected with and liked. And I had a good conversation with Shane Hawk about it. And, there's this fine line, I think, with some people appropriating, indigenous, I can't talk today, indigenous cultures and fables and myths and mythology and all that, just willy nilly. Right. And I'm the kind of person that, I don't want to do that. So I was like, all right, I had a good conversation with Shane. Do I need to take more medicine here? What's going on? Good conversation with Shane about that. And he really was able to connect and explain, reasonings and everything. And so I kind of, okay, that's great. So I, in many ways reworked the idea, and I'm still kind of, wrestling with getting it down. I have it all outlined out. So long-winded, Sean just keeps on talking. So you actually you have a friend on a Cherokee reservation, and you went there. What was the purpose? What was the main goal, and what did you get out of that for Blackbird's Dance?
First of all, yes, my good friend who I met on Facebook, Leah Dawn Cole. Hi, Leah. You meet people on Facebook, and most of the time you never get to meet them in person, right? But talking to Leah, she's like, oh, I live in, North Carolina on the Cherokee reservation. And I'm thinking, like, that's only a couple hour drive from me. And, my character, Will Shaw, he's Cherokee. And I'm thinking about, what if I have it set on a reservation? And anytime you write a book, you either need to already know your shit or you need to do your research, right? Otherwise, you're just a phony and you're going to write something that's completely generic or just wrong, right? And so I was like, okay, what if Will goes to the Cherokee reservation for this next book, and, the adventures and stuff happen around there? Well, if that's the case, I need to know about the Cherokee. I need, what are the streets called? What's the layout of the town? What's the culture like? So I went and visited Leah, and she showed me around the town. Me and my wife, she was pregnant at the time, and we're going around and showing me all these spots, and I'm taking pictures and I'm asking questions. And I went to a local bookstore and I bought a couple books on here we go. What are the books that I bought at Cherokee, North Carolina? The Secrets and Mysteries of the Cherokee Little People.
Oh, wow. Right? Amazing.
So this is one of their, part of their folklore, and it's got some nice art in it too.
Amazing.
Well, part of their folklore is that there's these like little people that live in the woods around there that are like interdimensional, mysterious beings, and they've got various powers and stuff. I was like, maybe I could work that into it. So, and what's the name of the hospital? What street is it? Oh, there's a casino. What's it called? Harrah's Casino? Well, I got to find out about Harrah's Casino. So I looked up the website, and I actually called them. I was like, what's your floor plan like? Which tower is your, presidential suite in, or whatever? Like, I'm calling these people, I'm reading this, and it's like, and I just wanted it to be as close as possible so that if anybody lives there actually read the book, they'd be like, holy shit, this guy knows his shit. He knows that if you turn left out of Harris and go down there, you're going to hit the dam and, So I try as much as I can. Like even Dying Sheep 3, it takes place in like San Rafael, California, for various reasons I won't get into now. But I was like, okay, what's in San Rafael, California? Well, they've got this, stadium over here, and it's right on the beach, and there's a fishing community, and there's this and that. Okay, so I got to work that. So you got to know your shit if you're writing a book, because people know their shit. And you don't want to write for the lowest common denominator. You want to write for the people who know their shit. So that's just kind of basic for me. But when you can do it like that, it's fun when you could actually visit the place. I could write a book about Jerusalem or something, or first century, Jerusalem. And it's like, boy, I'd have to read a lot of books to really feel like I can know what I'm talking about and be immersive. Or even if it's like, some European country, it's like, I could do plenty of research on that place. But if you go there, it's like the more you do, the harder you work, the better it shows up in your work.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my things, sorry if I'm rambling, but like one of the things I always like was they ask for advice on anything, but particularly writing. Do it the hard way. Don't do it the easy way. Don't cut corners. Human nature is about doing things the easy way. Why do we have microwaves? Oh, because cooking our food takes so much time and effort. Why do we have remote controls? Oh, because I don't want to have to get up off the couch and walk 3 feet to the TV and change the channels. Everything we invent, is an effort to make our lives easier.
Yep. Well, I mean, look at AI, right? Like, look at that. I mean,
that's a whole other discussion. But it's like, if you want something good, you want good results, you got to do it the hard way. Put in the way you want, like delicious, authentic Italian lasagna. Make that sauce from scratch. Make the pasta from scratch. Cut fresh cloves of garlic. Don't just take a frozen lasagna out of the freezer and put it in. Yeah, you'll get it quicker. It's a lot easier. But you will not have that excellent result.
Yeah.
And that's anything you do. Art, writing, whatever. Do it the hard way.
Yep.
Put in effort. Do the research. Do another draft. It's like, if you're trying to be as good as you can possibly be, I would say. If you're just trying to do something fun, like, I'll write a book and whatever. But like, if you're like, I'm always trying to push myself, always trying to be the best I can be, better than I have been, and whatever. And that means always doing it the hard way. I'll say one other thing before you ask another question, because this is a thing on social media and how people perceive me and stuff. A lot of what I say, in fact, most of what I say, you should really take with a grain of salt. I'm a snarky, sarcastic fool, and most of what I say, I'm joking. And in reality, I'm really self-deprecating. I'm very critical of myself, of my work, writing, my art, my looks. Oh, my nose looks too big today. Oh, I'm too hairy. I'm too short, whatever. But I think people's perception of me is that I'm like really kind of full of myself or whatever. And a lot of it is my fault, because I'll joke like that. People will come up to my table at a convention and be like, well, which one of your books should I get? And I'll say, well, they're all great, or, I'll be like, yes, I'm the greatest author of all time. And, this, I'll jokingly say this stuff. And online, it does not transfer as well as in person. People read your words. They can't see the look on your face. They can't hear the intonation in your voice. So people, like, I'll put like a little winky face next, if I write something like that. But, people, a lot's going to get lost in translation.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, I think, oh, Jesse thinks he's better than I. He thinks he's a better artist. He thinks he's a better writer. And really, it's like, no. Like anytime I draw something, I'm like, Frank Frazetta would have done that better. You know, right? Every time I write something, I'm like, it's still not as good as Robert McCammon. You know, I'm like really hard on myself. So just for anyone who thinks that I'm like, think I'm better or I think I'm the best or whatever, it's like, no,
Yeah.
I'm trying to be the best that I can be.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I'm better than some people.
Well, I mean, hey,
I'm being honest, like, yeah,
we
like,
all have egos.
there's spectrum. There are levels to this. There's like white belt all the way through black belt.
Yeah.
And even if you are a black belt, you're not necessarily the best, most deadly, badass black belt on the planet.
There's always someone better than you. Always.
So it's like, try to have that martial artist sort of mentality if you really want to be humble.
Yeah.
And I've got that sense of humor because, like, humility, like, everyone's like, be humble. And it's like, yeah, you do. But as a joke, I thought, like, wouldn't it be funny if instead of being humble, I became like the Muhammad Ali of indie authors? Like, you know, like boxers can do that.
Yeah.
MMA fighters, I'm the greatest of all time. Nobody can beat me, you know, kind of thing. And I'm like, what if I just fuck humility? What if I just walk into a convention like with like a frown and a robe, and I'm just like, I am the greatest, and like that was just my kick, you know. And that would be fun, but really, I'm not going to do that because
you're like, yeah, you know, we play through those, but that's segues right into kind of the pressures that I see that social media kind of puts on people. And I think in the past, before social media, a lot of authors, they would just write. So you never really saw an author. You never saw, you know, a video interview of an author. You never heard from them. They would sit in their cabin at their typewriter and just write. And the only glimpse of that author was the author bio on the back flap of the hardcover book. So things definitely have changed in this space for all creative people. And I think that social media gives I mean, when it's all said and done, in the big scheme of things, it's all bullshit because we all try to present our best self on social media. You know, we all, and you have to, and the thing is, like, you know, you think like, well, I can't, you know, let people in to show the struggles of things, and I'm doing great. So everyone is trying to project this sense of success. My last book sold, you know, 100,000 copies on whatever, or, you know, but it's all perception. I know enough in this business. I've been around and I've seen that when, you know, sometimes I've seen an author say, oh, over the weekend, I sold 1,000 copies of my book. Well, they gave it away for free. They
my book is ranked. I'm number 2 in horror in US.
Ranked number 2 in all those categories, which mean nothing. I've had number 1 books on my audiobooks. Guess how much I made from it? $50. You know, so it's all perception. So when I talk to people and other authors and everything, the first thing I say to any author that kind of comes on board and is like, well, you know, so-and-so sold this many of so-and-so, I go, forget all that. Forget, this is your book. This is, you know, you. We need to stop comparing ourselves to all these other people that are giving this impression of major success. Now, there are successful authors out there. There's successful publishers out there in the indie space. Not many. Mark and I were just talking about shortwave books last week. They do incredible work. One of the best indie publishers out there. They've been doing it for 3 years. Well, you know, they paid their authors, but company-wise, they lost $5,000. He put in $5,000 of his own money just to keep it going. He made nothing. He lost money. So you got to start kind of, especially today, especially with the misinformation All it's just, I don't, AI generated stuff. It's really hard to kind of parse the truth. And what, as creatives, in my opinion, the best thing we can go, instead of going big and trying to push how great, you're selling or whatever, it focus on your art, focus on your creativity, because you can pump out a book a month. That doesn't mean nothing. And other people are like, well, if I pump out a book a month, maybe then I'll be successful.
Well, also, you have to ask yourself what you really want and what do you consider successful?
Right.
And I'll tell people this, like various kinds of creative people, like, if you can imagine yourself being happy doing something else for a living, do that.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to make a living, like pay your bills, make a living as an artist, as a writer, as a filmmaker, as a music composer, in a band, if you're trying to pay your bills as like working in a band, that's like, boy, you might as well, like, if you can see yourself doing something else, like if you're happy working in an office or, working as a construction worker or whatever it is, do that. But man, if you can't see yourself being happy doing anything else, then do is art, then be in the band.
Because then that sacrifice is worth it. That blood, sweat, and tears that you're putting into that, and little pay for all the work you put into it. Writing a book, I think is the most labor-intensive thing that any creative can do. I think it's more labor-intensive than script writing. I think it's more, or screenwriting. I think it's more labor-intensive than art, than painting, drawing, because it's you and the written word and the story, and you got to connect all this stuff and spend a lot of time to get it right. And then, when the book comes out, and, like we see this all the time at Encyclopocalypse. I mean, I would love every one of our authors to have a best-selling book every time one's released. And, even other indie authors who are actually being honest with themselves and letting people in on, kind of peeling back the curtain, letting people know, some books do well, some books don't. We want all of them to do well. But, it's, and Mark and I always talk about sweat equity. And we always look for kind of like-minded people who we love this stuff. Could I imagine? I mean, is it easy to be a publisher in the capacity that I'm in? No. I mean, some days are better than others. Sometimes I'm working on trying to format a freaking book and I can't get the damn program to like center a paragraph properly. But at the end of the day, are we as a publisher in this capacity of creativity happy and proud of what we put out? And that's enough for us, because laying the bricks of this creative thing, you never know what's going to happen. But
yeah,
if we were only focused on the finances of it, like there's no way I would keep doing this. If I, when I do my taxes every year, I go,
it's like focusing on the destination rather than the journey. It's like, you have to enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
If you hate the journey, then like, if you're only doing this because you want that end result of being rich and famous and having everyone, kneeling down, praising you, it's like, well, then that's not enough, because you gotta love that journey. You might not ever make it to that point where you're rich and famous and all of that. And if that's the case, you're spending your life busting your ass doing something you don't enjoy doing for a result that you don't actually ever get.
Yeah.
You got to enjoy what you're doing in the practice. So it's like, whether or not Blackbirds Dance becomes some huge hit, I loved writing it. I loved doing the art, and I'm really proud of the final product. Like, it might be the best thing I've ever written. And I know that it might not be thousands of people, but even if there's like a few dozen people who read it, they're going to like it. Because if this kind of thing is their cup of tea, man, I did my best. If you like monsters and romance and intrigue and little stuff like that, you're going to love Skinner and Blackbirds Dance. And if only a few people feel that way, that's great. I enjoyed the process. I'll enjoy it a lot more if I make a shit ton of money off of it. But,
welcome to the.
If not, I'm enjoying myself in the process as I go. So, yeah. If you love writing, if you love editing, if you love people like, oh, I love to write, but I hate editing. Forget that. You love editing. Love it. It's part of the process. You're making your thing better. You're tweaking and you're moving things and you're cutting things and look, it's getting better right in front of your eyes. Work harder. Do it the hard way. Enjoy that process. Make that sauce from scratch.
Absolutely. That's a great note to end on. Make that sauce from scratch, everybody.
Me and Sean, we got the special sauce for y'all.
Special sauce. My wife and I are always, for some reason, we always say sauce when we're making spaghetti.
Well, me and my family, we're from New York, so we also say sauce.
Sauces. Jesse, man, thank you so much for this conversation. This is really good.
Thank you.
Very, very happy with the depth that we can chat about things, and I hope you, the viewer and listener, I hope you enjoy this too, because this is something that I want to continue to bring to EcycloPod. This isn't just buy this guy's book. We want to peel back the curtain a little bit on the process of writing and creativity, because that's the special sauce, everybody. You can just have a product. Also, you can have AI.
And also buy my book.
And buy the book right here. Boom. I didn't even show some of the artwork inside.
And
just fantastic
you haven't
stuff.
Read.
Wonderful.
This is part 2. If you haven't read part 1, guess what? You can read part 1 first.
We're not going to look at, we're not here to sell a product, but we also kind of are. But
not at all.
But
totally don't go buy my book.
But the journey to the product is what we love to talk about. And that
enjoy the journey, people.
And the journey, I believe, always makes the end product better. You can have AI shit out anything you want these days, but is it good? Does it have heart and humanity? No. Is it really creative? Or is it just regurgitating stuff? So this is what I appreciate about Jesse here is the work he puts into his craft, the self-reflection and the growth that Jesse's always pursuing, that we all as creatives should be pursuing. And just, I love that Jesse, that you dabble in things and you bring things together. I love that there's a book for someone who wants just a quick, fun, goofy read. And there's books for people want a little bit more composite. The Skinner Saga. Pray to God. There's more. There's more than just a creature figure. So check out Jesse's books. You can see the link or our website down at the bottom corner. Should be in the show notes. Grab Jesse's books. Grab Skinner and Blackbirds Dance. I believe I have a combo set up on the site for a special price. It should be and if not, I'll put it up right after this. But check it out. Check out Jesse's work. And you know what? Ignore the noise on social media, everybody. Just don't compare yourself to others. Do your art. Be creative.
Yes.
And be fulfilled in what you are doing. All right. Jesse, thanks again.
It was a pleasure.
Thank all of you for listening and watching. We will talk to all of you next time. I'm hoping I'm not yelling, but I kind of am. Have a great time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.